What if everything you were told about buying a home, save harder, spend less, be patient, was never going to work? Not because you failed the system, because the system was never designed for you to succeed. The number that changed everything is not the one you think. It is not the average UK house price, which sits north of £285,000. It is not the average deposit, which now takes over a decade to save. The number is the ratio, the relationship between what a house costs and what a person earns. In 1997, the average home cost roughly 3.5 times the average salary. Today, that figure is closer to 9. In London, it has crossed 14. That gap did not happen by accident. For most of the 20th century, the idea was simple. You work, you save, you buy. The timelines were reasonable, the goalpost was visible, an entire culture was built around it. Property as security, as identity, as the foundation of a stable adult life. That belief did not disappear, it just stopped being true. But that is only part of what was happening. The 2008 financial crisis rewired the entire system in ways most people still do not fully understand. Interest rates were slashed to near zero to prevent economic collapse. The intention was to stimulate borrowing, encourage spending, and pull the economy back from the edge. What it also did, quietly and consistently, was make property the most attractive investment on earth. Cheap debt meant cheap mortgages. Cheap mortgages meant more buyers. More buyers meant higher prices, and higher prices meant property owners became wealthier, not through effort, but through holding. The government, watching a generation get priced out, introduced Help to Buy in 2013. The logic seemed sound. Help first-time buyers with their deposits and more people get onto the ladder. What it actually did was inject billions of pounds of state-backed demand into a market that was already running out of supply. Builders responded not by building more homes, but by raising prices on the ones they had. The scheme helped people buy, it also made buying harder for everyone else. Here is where the story shifts from a market problem to something closer to a structural one. Between 2016 and 2023, institutional investors, pension funds, private equity firms, global asset managers accelerated their entry into the UK residential property market. These are not landlords with a second flat in Swindon. These are organisations managing billions of pounds of capital, buying hundreds of homes at a time in the same streets where young families are trying to save for a deposit. When a first-time buyer loses a bidding war, they often do not know who won it. The answer, increasingly, is a company. This is not illegal. In many cases, it is actively encouraged by planning frameworks and tax structures that favour large-scale development and institutional ownership. But it means something has changed at a fundamental level. An entire generation is no longer competing with each other for homes. They are competing with balance sheets. And then there's rent. When buying becomes impossible, renting becomes the only option. And when renting becomes the only option, landlords can charge what the market will bear. The average UK monthly rent crossed £1,200 in 2023. In cities like London, Manchester and Bristol, the figure is significantly higher. For someone earning the median wage, a third to a half of their take-home pay disappears before they've touched food, transport or savings. The deposit they need to escape renting is the same deposit they cannot save while paying rent. It's a loop with no natural exit. But the financial mechanics are only half the story. The other half is what home ownership actually represents and what its absence quietly removes. A mortgage, paid over time, is forced savings. Every payment builds equity. Every year of ownership is a year of compounding wealth. A lifetime of renting is a lifetime of building someone else's. The gap between those two outcomes, measured across a generation, is not cosmetic. It's the difference between entering retirement with an asset and entering it with nothing but a tenancy agreement. The most uncomfortable conclusion is not that the system is broken, it's that for a specific group of people, it's working exactly as designed. Low supply keeps values high. High values keep existing owners wealthy. Wealth creates political influence. Political influence shapes housing policy. The cycle protects itself. None of this requires conspiracy. It doesn't need a villain in a boardroom. It's the natural output of a set of incentives pointed in one direction for long enough that changing course feels almost impossible. By 2024, the UK government had missed its own housing targets for 11 consecutive years. The question that sits at the end of all this is not really about bricks and mortar. It's about what a society decides to do when the thing it promises its citizens, stability, a place to belong, a foundation to build from, becomes structurally inaccessible to the majority of them. Whether what comes next looks like reform or rationalization probably depends on who's making the decisions and who owns the homes they're making those decisions from.